Hello, everyone. This is Prashant, and I'll be your host for the ChoubeySahab podcast. And today we have Naman Sarawagi with us, a co-founder at Refrens. That's a one-stop solution for freelancers and agencies to manage their work and get more work from different clients through their network. Now, Naman, we are so glad to have you here with us today.
Hey Prashant, thank you for having me.
Absolute pleasure. So, first things first, I would like to start off with a Doha that you once shared on Twitter. All right. So, this one goes world class sab mange, world class बनाए न कोई जब वर्ल्ड क्लास बन के सामने आए तो कॉस्टली सब रोए. So, this was a really nice Doha that you had shared on Twitter. And I thought this was the perfect note to start this conversation on you having built a world class product to help freelancers and agencies to manage all different parts of their work. So basically, freelancers are good at one thing, maybe it can be writing or speaking or something like that. But then there are so many different elements to going independent that you have to manage the invoices, contact with companies, back and forth. So you're taking care of all those parts, so that they can focus on what they're good at, right?
Yeah.
So to start off with, why did you start Refrens? What's the story behind Refrens?
So, I exited my last business in 2016. From 2016 to 18, I was freelancing. So, me and my co-founder Mohit, we were both freelancing. I would help people in product and marketing. He would help in technology, and we are talking about all kinds of companies. Companies that are now unicorns. There are some offline startups that were trying to go online, right, and at all scale. And part of my work was also to assist the founders to hire agencies, either for technology outsourcing, PR outsourcing, or performance marketing, etc. So I had started playing all three roles: a freelancer, B, for some founders, I would take the decision. So I was the client, and in some cases, I was like the broker in between, right? Trying to convince a client that this is a good freelancer or an agency to work with. Now, this gave me a lot of insight into how this industry works. We were already working around an idea, but that was not like a freelancer focused or something. It was more of a business networking idea. But once we started digging deeper into this industry, we thought our original idea of whatever the networking, business networking we were thinking, it syncs well with this audience of freelancers and agencies or B2B service providers in general. And that is where we started building on referencing, what does it need to have and what will it ultimately become. So I think 2018 end is when we went full time. Me and Mohit, started working full time on reference.
All right. So 2018 is the year that you started, and that means it's been around 4 years. You have been working on Refrens, and it's doing fairly well. So my question is, how have you seen the freelance market fare over the years in India and even globally?
So I think particularly because of pandemic, companies have started commissioning a lot of work to freelancers, or they've started outsourcing a lot of work because there is more comfort around the worker not being in office. If the worker is not in office, they might as well be a part-time worker or a freelancer, right? So there are a lot of things that were earlier not outsourced, but today people are more comfortable outsourcing. In general, the need for business service providers is higher. I mean, if more companies are chasing more growth, they will need a lot of temporary workforce. Most of these will be knowledge workers, given how most companies are evolving now. So overall, the need for freelancer will go high, or a need for a outsourced service provider. Now, this could be a freelancer, or this could be like a large 50 people team. But in general, the need will be.
Right. That sounds like a very insightful thing that you shared. That companies are more welcoming of freelancers since now everyone is working from home. So it doesn't matter if that's a freelancer or an actual employee. So it's basically the same thing because they are getting the work done. My next question is that who can really be a freelancer? Is there any set of requirements that one needs to fulfill to be a freelancer?
Right. So the way to look at this is right. If you are say good at writing, right, and you work for an agency or you work for a company and your salaries are fixed, etc. Right, and you think you can become a freelancer. Okay, I'll take another analogy. Assuming you make great pav bhaji, okay, and your family loves it, but if you had to open a restaurant around pav bhaji, the taste of pav bhaji is probably only 10 to 20% of what it takes to open a restaurant. Okay. So if you think you're only good at making, only good at writing, but you are not good at other things around it, right? Finding a new client, managing your finances, actually talking to the client. A lot of creative people, for example, they are great when they are working for agencies. But if you have to outsource that work, they will, if they have to become independent, right, and take on everything that an agency does, then it will be very, very difficult for them, right? So right from, so again, writing becomes like 10 to 20% of the total work that they are doing, right? So in that sense, freelancing is not for everyone. Okay, just like startups are not for everyone, freelancing is not for everyone, because people cannot take that uncertainty, and not everyone wants to ride that growth path, right? So only if you think, whatever your skill set is, apart from that, you're also good at finances, you're also good at talking to clients, and you enjoy doing that, right? Finding new clients and doing client servicing. So I think the core work is more like 30%, and the overall, other things apart from your core work is more like 70% of the effort, right? And that is where a lot of freelancers get surprised, saying, okay, this is too difficult, why is the client acting like this? Because when you're working for an agency, or when you're working full time in a company, it doesn't work that way, right? And everything comes clean to you, and you're only focusing on what your core skill is, right? But once you get thrown out in the market, you realize, okay, making pav bhaji was the easiest part, right? The client doesn't like the table, the plates are not clean, the cook did not show up, the rents are too high, or whatever, the municipal corporation is disturbing me. So all those problems will come in.
Absolutely. So it can be said that it looks more rosy on the outside than it is on the inside.
Absolutely.
Because from the outside it's look like, okay, you're independent, you can work on your own time, and you can get your own clients, and possibly even get multiples of income than what you would on working at just one company, right? So I want your take on this. Like, do you see that this option of going the freelance way will come in trend in the coming years? People will want to go more independent, work for multiple companies at once, because that opens up the possibility of working with multiple companies. That means multiples of income as well. Uh, but with the downsides that you just mentioned, that most freelancers or wannabe freelancers aren't really aware of, do you see that it can be a possibility that a big part of the new workforce will want to go the freelance way, or will they stick to being employed to one company and enjoying peace of mind?
Okay, so will the number of freelancers increase? Definitely. There will be another trend of people freelancing for few years in their career. It could be the first few years, or between two jobs, etc. Right? The way I did it, for example, right? I had a good startup, exited that, did not have any other plans at that time. So, few projects came in. I thought, I'm probably helping friends, etc. And then few more projects came in. And then I turned, for 2 years, I was like a full-time freelancer, right? So I think those kind of things will happen more often, especially with high skilled people, uh, you know, or consultants, for example, right? So large companies, when you see, right, say when Indian Post, they hired McKinsey to turn around India Post, right, saying, how can we monetize more, how can we improve their processes. Now, because India Post wanted to grow, so they brought in a external consultant, and then it worked out, right? A lot of companies are now trying to grow where they cannot either afford a full-time employee to help them change their processes or establish new processes, or they don't need them. I mean, both with respect to utilizing their time and being able to afford them full-time, right? Because both of these are not possible, they will look to hiring more consultants and, freelancers or one-time part-time workers, right? And hence this trend will grow. What we've seen in the past is very specific, say technology jobs, right? Almost every Infosys, full-time employee freelancers, they moonlight, for an extra project, right? So this will happen in more businesses. In fact, I know a lot of, VC analysts who act like investment bankers, like a side hustle, right? So this trend is definitely here to stay, and this will even add more skills. So when I looked at my own work during those 2 years of, of freelancing, is I would learn a lot of things with one client, and then I was able to apply that to another client, So the cost of learning is also distributed, and I was definitely learning faster. So in that sense, it looks like a very lucrative thing to do. Right? What doesn't work for a lot of people is that uncertainty, or you're not just, maybe you're not meant to talk to clients, right? A lot of times we have a hard time trying to sell a freelancer to a client because he's good at his skill. I know he's good at his skill, but they're not presentable, right? Either the language skills are bad, or they are just not on time. I mean, especially with creative people, I see this, right? They wouldn't turn up for meetings, or they think it is okay to be 10 minutes late or whatever, right? So it's hard to sell them. If somebody can overcome all these things, and then freelancing will be, very lucrative for them.
Sure. And talk me more into this concept that you talked about, where a person is employed, is a full time employee at one company, let's say Infosys, or maybe another startup, let's say Cred, and he or she wants to also freelance in their free time. So, is that a possibility, given that these days contracts mention that you cannot really work outside of the company? And if you do, that would be a violation of the contract that there is.
Okay, so Infosys and say a high growth startup are two very different career paths. Okay, so if you are working at a high growth startup, no matter what extra time you have, I would never advise you to freelance. Okay, any other source of income, uh, because this will actually hamper your growth in that company. You wouldn't realize, but the freelance work will always take precedence to the actual full time work, right? Because that client will be always buzzing you. There will be deadlines, etc. Here, you already have a rapport with the manager. Maybe he's not buzzing you all the time, right? So, but in the long term, it will seem that you've lost the track with your high growth startup. So I would never recommend to freelance or do any kind of work that gives you a kick or money while you are working for a startup. Okay. Uh, Second, if you're working for something like Infosys, where 30% of the time you're on bench, I would definitely suggest you to do like freelancing as a side hustle. A, it it will give you that kick, because being on bench is not like a very nice thing to have, right? So, and an extra income is also good, but even to increase your knowledge, it would be like a nice thing. I know a lot of people who start freelancing at Infosys, and then they actually move to a full-time startup later, right? So it's a great way to test the waters if you're ready for that outside world, right?
Let's talk about the money aspect of freelancing, because that is one aspect that is very tempting to most people that want to get into it. So, is that really as tempting on the inside like it seems on the outside? Is there a good amount of money to be made given that you have the skill? So, what does it look like?
Okay, so freelancing should be looked at as a new business. Okay, now if you're going to start a new business, first year will not be profitable. Maybe second year you'll just break even. Maybe third year will start growing. Okay, so freelancing is no different. If you start out freelancing and you expect, okay, a lot of clients are going to flow in, etc., it will not happen. First year you are just in the market trying to build relations, try to do any job at any price. Right? Only in the second year, third year, you'll see clients coming back to you or referring you more clients, and when your network grows, you start getting more work. A great way to start freelancing in that sense would be your existing employer becomes your first client as a freelancer. Okay, so you've been helping some company with some growth marketing, and now you think, okay, they are not utilizing all your 40 hours a week, or something on that scale. Then you may offer them saying, why don't I become part-time? I'll help you somebody manage all the mundane work, and all the knowledge work I can still manage, etc. If they agree, they become your first client, right? So that would be a great way to start out. But if you think, okay, is this lucrative? First 2 years, definitely not. Okay. On the other side, I've seen people who've who make very serious amount of money freelancing. Okay, and in India, if you're say 5 years or 6 years experienced, and if you're making upwards of 10 lakh rupees a month, right, I would call that lucrative, right? Because there is no capital expenditure that has gone into this. You're probably managing 2 3 clients, and you are achieving this, right? And this is possible. This is possible in all kinds of professions, whether it's like purely creative, it is maybe CA, accounting, right, or a growth marketer kind of role. Right? This is possible. Okay, but again, you need to have that network and be willing to work as hard. Okay, there's definitely no 40 hours work week once you've started freelancing. So in that sense, you'll have to see whether, what are you trying to optimize your money or your time.
That's a good way to put it. Uh, so now, what are the most sought after freelancers? Like what categories? I believe there are different categories of freelancers. Some are writers, some do creative design or something like that. So since you know things on the inside, what kind of freelancers are the most sought after?
So purely from the demand point of view, there are things in marketing and accounting that can never be in-house. Okay, so most business owners do not need an advertising guy in-house, right? They'll need to do something around advertising, etc. once in a while, right? Or video production, right? Creating a lot of assets for marketing, let's say, let's put it that way, right? Graphics, video, written content, etc. So that's definitely number one in freelancing. Second is anything around compliances, right? So you don't need a CA, CS full time, but every business needs that, right? So again, that is another place to look at. Uh, People tend to think that software developers are, great freelancers, etc. I think that is a very big gap. Software developers as an agency work out, but not as a freelancer. Okay, because if you're say only a backend developer or you're only a front end developer, etc., you cannot take on the whole project. So you need to come in as a team, right? So as an agency that will work, not as a pure play single player team, right? Second, also people like to work with software developers like more long term kind of thing, right? So you may have remote software developers but not freelance software developers, right? So that's a gap in the market. uh, Apart from that, I think just these two, right? I mean, marketing, assets related, and accounting, these two are like the most sought after thing. You will never go out of work if you are good at these things.
Sounds good. So you mentioned briefly about what are the complications that a freelancer might face, or the things that people are ignorant of while they're entering into the freelance business thing. Can you talk more into it about the risks and complications involved? Like, what is the life of a freelancer really like?
So I think very similar to entrepreneur. Okay, so if a lot of listeners have been a founder of a startup, a freelancer's life is no different. Okay, like a founder is looking for a product market fit, a freelancer is trying to figure out their niche. Okay, so this is the kind of industry I want to service. I will only service this category of services. So maybe if I'm a CA, I will not do audit. I will only do you know uh, maybe help do fundraise. Okay, only do valuations. Okay, so finding that niche is a task. Okay, second is managing your personal finance. Okay, because the cash flow is not very certain. So in the initial days, just get to remain profitable, as you say in startups, right? So make sure you are able to pay up for your office space, whatever co-working space you are working from, basic your rent, food bill, etc. Right? Once you got there, then you can experiment with what kind of clients you want to work with, not work, right? But the struggle is very similar, and because I've been on both the sides, I can feel that the struggle is very similar to almost starting a business. It's just that when we think of startups, we think of product companies that are very high growth for 5 to 10 years. As a freelancer, high growth means you need to hire people, right? You go from being a one-person team to probably a 50 people agency, and it's the same, right? Like a high growth startup. Uh, I think the monetary, more than just the monetary uncertainty, there is also a lot of self realization that you do, saying I'm good at this or I'm not good at that, right? Because clients generally tend to compare freelancers with full time employees, right? So a freelancer will always be more costly, but a good freelancer will always give you higher output in terms of the end result of whatever needs to be done, right? Only then he's a good freelancer. But because the client will compare, saying, "Oh my God, this is like 10,000 rupees an hour," right? But what they forget is, I'll get this done in like 1 hour. Like your full time employee might take like 2 3 days to finish this. So, and then some clients can be very very painful, right? I mean, when you're a full time guy, this is how your manager works, this is how your company works. But when you have multiple clients, each client works in a different way. Maybe you are cooperative, and your point of contact at the client's place is good, etc. But their internal systems are broken, right? So I know a freelancer recently, right? They let go of the client because the client's team was not disciplined, right? I mean, the same file would be asked for multiple times. uh, somebody would reply to the email too fast, and then somebody else would come and counter that on the email itself, right? So as like, I'm not talking to one person in that company, and that company is very indisciplined, hence that is taking away a lot of time, right? And this was only one out of five clients that this freelancer had. But after they let go of this client, they were like, this is such a like a relief. I don't get up in the morning with anxiety, right? Because this client would be pinging at like 12 a.m. and they expect, again, indiscipline. So imagine having a bad manager, right? So having a bad client is as painful.
Absolutely agree on that one. And just like the clients choose the freelancers they work with and the agencies they work with, so should the freelancers also
So this
choose
is
the
actually
clients.
what happens, more,
Yeah.
and we see this, more freelancers reject clients than clients can reject freelancers. Okay. So it's not like a something buying you are buying on Amazon, right? You click a button and you pay and it will be delivered to you. It's not like that, right? I mean, the client, the freelancer is more likely to always reject the client, right? I mean, imagine if I tell you you are an investment banker and you help me raise series A to B is your sweet spot, right? Now there is this new age startup trying to raise 2 crores angel round, etc., and you want to engage with this guy, this investment banker who helps raise series A. Now this investment banker A, the price point is not justified because there's not enough money to be made, right? When they help raise series B, they make a couple of crores. Here they'll make a couple of lakhs, right? Series A, B startups are more polished, right? The founder is more polished, but the angel level guys are not polished enough, difficult to sell, right? But as a client, I would want this guy to represent my case, right? Because this guy looks better, right? I mean, this guy has some success behind them versus somebody who just helps. And the clients of this person are more renowned, so I'm resonating well with this vendor, right? But the vendor is thinking that this client is useless. I mean, this is like below my belt, right? And everybody is looking to hit above their weight class. So the vendor would always reject more clients than the client can reject vendors.
This is very interesting. So I actually didn't think that it can be this way as well. I always thought that it's the clients rejecting the freelancers and the independent workers and not the other way around. But it's
So
good to
honestly, this
know.
is purely
Yeah.
like dating, So it's
Okay.
consent from both the sides, or employment, right? I mean, the first time, so when there is recruitment happening, the client is trying to convince candidates saying, "Apply to my company. My company is great to work for." And then once people have applied, then the client is the employer, which is the client, is rejecting candidates, saying, "Okay, you're not fit to work for." Right? Here also this happens where partly it's the client enticing the vendor, and then the vendor enticing the client. It's both ways.
Exactly. And that point that you just mentioned, that doing work for different people, although it's the same kind of work, like raising around for this company or that company, might just take the same amount of effort for that person, but it's making different amount of money at two different places, right?
Right.
So do freelancers understand this, that their effort, the same amount of effort, commands different rewards at working for different clients? If yes, how do they pick and choose?
So they know this consciously, subconsciously. They always know this, that this client is painful and this client is very helpful. A lot of freelancers, especially the ones who do not grow, they don't know how to let go of the client. Okay, so this might be your first client where you've also built, like social relation with that client, right, beyond your work, and you don't know how to let go of this client, right? But again, drawing an analogy from startup, your first user in the startup will always be bad. I mean, after 1 year or 2 years, you'll have to let go of that user, right? Or stop building around that user persona, right? So similar thing happens in freelancing also. Maybe this was your first client. You've grown as a freelancer, right, in your skill set and in your price points, etc. But just because this was your first few clients, you're not letting go of them, right? Which is bad, right? But once you start filtering that, saying, okay, I have space for 5 good clients only, right? So this one doesn't qualify for that. Let me let go of that. I mean, just the way companies fire employees saying, this is like the bottom five. If I remove them, my average employee productivity increases. Freelancers should do that. I know good freelancers, good agencies who always do that, saying, okay, I mean, I do not have time for you. Or they'll just start ignoring, right? Saying delayed work or whatever, right? It will start showing up in their general discipline. So it is bad to do that, saying, just because this client is painful, I'll not pick up their call. It is a little difficult for one time to say no to the client, saying, okay, I'm dropping you off, or maybe I don't have enough time for you, so I'll introduce you to somebody else. But that's the best thing to do, right? So don't destroy your social relation with them, but also don't waste your time.
Absolutely. So, so I believe that then in that case, freelancers in their mind would be having a specific section of people or the target market which they serve. Do they actively communicate that I only work with companies that are in this range or founders that are in this range, something
So
like that?
again, they don't do that. Most freelancers, they run after everything that they get. Okay, and that is a very big problem. Okay, they don't define saying this is my price range, this is my industries that I want to serve, etc. So say an office interior guy, if they get a residential project, right, for interior design, they would just take it. Sometimes they would take it to learn new skills, but at times they take it because they don't have enough work, or they don't know, saying that I should actually say no to this kind of work, right? I have done that. I took up some kind of growth marketing opportunity for this Dubai based client, right? And I knew that, okay, they will never reach this level. I mean, this person does not have the capability to actually do a fundraise. Okay, neither do they want to get there. They're just doing this like a hobby, right? But I took it saying, okay, maybe it will be fun, right? And I got fired by that client after 6 months. And I was not interested in this client. I was just doing, attending calls, doing whatever I could. But the results were not even expected. At least from my end, I thought, I will never be able to deliver the expectations, right? And after 6 months, the client said, you've done a very pathetic job for me and I don't want to engage with you, right? And the point is, I knew this on day one. I never wanted to work with this client. I would never have good conversations with that client, right? Because it's like a two-way thing, right? The client doesn't know that certain things are not possible, or their expectations are mismatched, right? And I'm trying to do whatever I've learned for other kind of companies, but it wouldn't work for this kind of company, right? Ideally, I wouldn't shouldn't have taken up that client, right? But I did it, and it was wrong, right? I've seen this a good friend, when they started out, I had given them a nice lead, and they worked for them for 3 months, and in the fourth month, they called me up saying, I want to let go of this client. And this was a design agency. And I said, why? I mean, they're paying you good. And he's like, I don't see this account growing for the next 1 year. And I don't see that I can mention them on my website after 1 year. I mean, they are not a logo that I would want to showcase, right? And I have other larger logos to showcase, right? So if they are not helping me build a better brand, and they are not going to increase my revenue in 1 year, why am I wasting my time on them, right? And personally, I've seen this agency like grow very, very fast, right? And purely from like a two people team to 25 people team in like 2 years. For an agency, that's very fast growth. And they work for at least three unicorns in Indian market, right? And started out as like a 23-year-old. So that way, having that choice, saying this is what I want to work for, this I don't want to work for. It's again in the startup analogy. It's like knowing your user persona and focusing, saying, I am not servicing this market, right? So it's the same thing in freelancing as well.
Yeah, it's that thing where you say that elimination makes your life better, not addition. So
Absolutely,
if you eliminate the
absolutely.
wrong kind of people and the wrong kind of companies, then you're left with the good ones. So that makes your life a lot easier. And it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to compromise on your revenue. You can just focus that energy and that time on someone who's worth the effort, right?
Yep.
And who appreciates what you're doing, right? All right. So for freelancers, one big thing is to pitch their services to these potential clients. Now, what are the different ways to do that, and how should freelancers build their portfolio, which is attractive uh, to these clients at a stage when they are just starting out?
Okay. So when you're starting out, take up any work and every work. Okay, don't be selective. So there are three things you should be optimizing for. A, is this a great logo to add on my portfolio? B, is this paying me well? And C, am I learning something new? Okay, first five projects, don't even think of these things. Okay, and I've recorded a separate video where I talk about, how do you select your first few clients and how do you price for them. And the thing that we generally advise freelancers is, uh, if the logo is good, I mean, if the client is well known, do it for free. Okay, just so that you can showcase them on your portfolio, right? Second, if you're getting to learn something new, do it at cost price. I mean, don't try to make a lot of money. If there is not a great logo, not a lot of money to be made, not anything new to learn, then definitely focus on money, right? Saying that, I will maximize my hourly rates or whatever, what money I can make from this client, right? So in that, for a new guy, in that, order, who am I working for? Am I learning something new? And then how much money will I make? Right, in that order. And once you've solved for this, you will grow very fast, right? But if your first few clients, may help you make some money, right? Obviously, nobody's giving you more than market rate, so you do not make a premium there, right? And they are not even good brands to showcase. So people will be like, you've been in the market for 1 year, but you've worked for all unknown companies, so there's no reason I should give you. Second, when you're pitching, right? We tend to think, okay, I'm a great designer. I can talk about the nuances of my skill to the client. The client doesn't understand all those things, right? I mean, you are not a junior designer being hired by a senior designer, right? If that is the case, you're not actually working for a client, you're working for an agency with some kind of subcontracting kind of arrangement, right? So only when you are, in a freelancing world, most likeliness is that the client knows nothing about your profession. So they don't even know that, okay, a UI designer is not a graphic designer. They may not even know that. Okay, they don't even know where to draw those boundaries. Right? In this case, what the client is focusing on is what kind of experience do you have, as in what kind of other clients you work for. Have you worked for somebody I know in my industry, somebody I respect in general? So if I said, I'm a designer at Flipkart, people wouldn't even ask whether I'm a graphic designer or UI designer. Everybody would be willing to give me work, right? People wouldn't even understand that there are at least 200 designers at Flipkart, and maybe I worked on a very small, some widget somewhere, right? And everybody will be like, okay, I know Flipkart, you're a designer at Flipkart, so we'll give you work. So in the initial days, that logos on your portfolio is the most important things. Most clients will not appreciate or not understand your nuanced conversations around your skills. Don't even try to pull that off, right? So you don't get to say then, oh, I'm a better designer. How is that guy growing faster, right? It's almost like, again, in the startup world, better product doesn't help you win, better distribution helps you win, right? So same thing here, right? Just because you're a better designer doesn't mean you'll grow fast. Maybe you're in the wrong market. Maybe you don't have enough things to showcase.
Yeah, sure. And talking about India particularly, so India is a market which is abundant in talent, and that's why we see that a lot of freelancers and independent workers are also coming out of here. Do you see India becoming the freelance capital of the world? Is that already happening?
Okay, so if you look at data, there are about 10% of total freelance workforce is in India. Okay, but if you look at by population, I think about 20% of global population is in India, right? So that gap is still there. Okay, there are certain kinds of professions that will not be outsourced cross border. So technology can be outsourced cross border, but anything that is marketing related, that requires a lot of understanding of local culture, etc., they those kind of work cannot be outsourced. So a marketing guy in India would be probably working for an Indian client only. Okay, and if it's a US based client, they would have to be, under at least a great understanding of the US culture. Again, so to say that it will become a freelance capital, I don't think so. I mean, just by population and law of averages, etc. Yes, we will have the largest, because we'll have the largest workforce. We'll have the largest freelance workforce, but otherwise, I don't see anything, in favor of India for this segment.
Okay, so there's this new concept or this new market that's coming up, almost like the freelance economy. It's very trendy, and that's called the creator economy, where you go out there, create content, and create courses. run a podcast maybe, and all sorts of things. And that is what we call the creator economy, where people are becoming their own media houses in a way. So how do you see that one coming up? What are your thoughts on
So
this?
I'll tell you very broadly, right? The way to differentiate between creator economy and the freelancer economy is B2B versus B2C. Okay. So creator economy is more B2C, where you monetize your audience either by sponsored posts or by selling something to them, right? And a freelancer is generally B2B, where you wouldn't have an audience, but you would have a network, right? So assuming if you are following a creator, you would buy a course that creator is selling, okay? And you have to keep growing your audience base to be able to sell more courses. In the freelancing world, it's always your second layer of network. So there are people you know directly, your past colleagues, your friends, family, etc. Their network, so it becomes your second order network, is who you are selling to. So if somebody comes to your family member saying, oh, do you know a great designer, your family member might point them to you saying, okay, this guy is a great designer, or your past colleagues saying, right? So as a freelancer, you grow your primary network. Your primary network automatically grows your secondary network. In the creator economy, you always focus on your primary network, which will generally be larger. Okay. So in the creator economy, I think yes, those sponsored posts kind of thing, where I said, right, you are monetizing your audience either by selling a course or by selling a sponsored post, right? Like talking about other brands. So I think last 2 years were very very skewed, where the rates, I mean, the fees that these creators took was very high. Okay, almost unjustified, and I know a lot of brands who paid them, but the ROI wasn't there. Okay, also because of this whole funding thing, right? I mean, most creators are promoting a startup product, which are heavily funded. The second type of buying courses from creators, again, uh, so yes, a new economy is coming up, but people had a lot of time during pandemic, so they would be buying a lot of courses, and it was a cool thing to do. I think most successful ones, like the way freelancers convert to agencies, a lot of successful creators would maybe create something around their basic content. So like Vaibhav Sisinti is very popular, right? He used to sell courses around LinkedIn growth hacks, etc. And now he started Growth School, saying whatever science and art I knew about selling courses, I can apply it to other people as well who have great knowledge to share, but they don't know how to sell their courses. Right. If you look at Ankur Variku, for example, he has great content to share. He's saying, can I share this content in different formats? Right. So right from paid courses to maybe books that he's selling. Right. There are some corporate events I think he does. Right. Or people are just offering him to be on their investor list, right? Because he's an influential person on the internet. So there will be different formats of growth. Creator economy is definitely here to stay, right? But I think the last 2 years, the average income of creators, whatever we saw, that was the peak. It will go lower from here. Okay, it wouldn't go higher.
Okay, so you're saying that since the circumstances were unusual, and in those circumstances, creators kind of uh, got the benefit of it, right? And we won't see the same kind of trends going forward. And I also see that there is a certain kind of inequality in how the creators are paid. For the initial creators, the payment is very, very low. It's just doesn't even pay for the efforts. But for the top tier creators who are like above 100K or something, for them the payments and the amount of deals they get is abnormally larger. So there is that inequality, and I believe that's not just in the creator economy but in every
See, that
economy.
is true for any kind of
Yeah,
media, right? So creator
yeah.
economy, a creator or an influencer, they're giving you two things. They are giving you an audience. So they are a media company, imagine a news channel. B, they are also the influencer. So they are the star in the ad, right? They are the endorser, right? So if I go to a smaller or a lesser known person, and I'm only paying for that audience, you have 15,000 followers, 20,000 followers, I'm only paying for that. When I go to a larger person, the brand value is also larger. Okay. So say putting an ad on the same news channel with very well-known Bollywood actor versus a newbie model, right? So the communication is the same, the audience is the same, but the kind of influence you are driving is very different. So the premium that larger, creator economy people or influencers are getting is with respect to how large a respect that they enjoy, right? So even if I'm not following Bhuvan Bam, for example, right, I know about him, right? So if I see Bhuvan Bam in an ad, he's like a celebrity, right? So if I see him on an ad, I'll get influenced saying, okay, this brand can afford this guy, so must be a great brand, right? Uh, but if the same thing is coming from a low key influencer, I'm only paying for the audience. I'm not paying for that face. So I think that is the mismatch that happens.
That one totally clarified why this is so. And I am totally loving how you are giving crystal clear answers to all my questions, like analogies for everything and stuff. So I'd like to ask you this question. How do you get this clarity of thought? Do you read a lot, or just your analysis is good of how things work, or are you thinking a lot?
So I don't
How does
know.
it
I don't know if there is a lot of clarity in thoughts. But I definitely read a lot. Okay. I mean, which may not be a great thing to do because reading a lot also means I'm spending a lot of time on Twitter and Instagram, etc. Right, to find new content. Uh, but I don't know. I think I've been a product manager, so it helps. That's my job, right? To break down a business problem, explain it to technology people, or you know, see how the market will react to it. So I think that's my job.
great? And it's actually something that's kind of a requirement for every founder level person. They have to pitch to so many different kinds of people, whether they are people they are hiring, or investors, or
Right.
just any stakeholders there,
Right.
right? So it's a great thing to have. Okay, so my last question for you today is, what's the future of work in your opinion? And you can combine all these different economies that you know of: freelance economy, creator economy, remote working. What do you see it becoming in the coming years?
Okay, so I think there will be a cycle that will be followed. Some of the things that I see is here to stay. Some bit of remote working for knowledge workers. Okay, I've seen personally. So we've gone from having an office to completely remote during COVID. Now we are like 99% people come to office. Like I mean, just one person who is remote and everybody's office. But even for people who are coming to office, I think 10 years ago there was no work from home. In most startups, if it is work from home, it basically you are on holiday, but you don't want your leave be marked, right? But today I see a lot of employees when they take work from home, they are actually working, right? So that sense of you know I don't know a respect for the workplace has come in. Okay, people are not taking things for granted, and that makes a manager's life very easy. Saying, okay, work from home is actually work from home, and it's not leave with pay. Okay, that is here to stay. Okay, remote working again is here to stay. People have just got comfortable working, cross border. Okay, for a certain kind of companies, it will not work out. So and certain kind of profession. So I don't expect a product manager to be away from their designer, for example, right? Or a product manager to be away from their customer support team. Okay, but if you're a traditional business, you will be more than willing to hire that content writer from another city rather than your same city, right? You would be okay to not meet that person in person, right? So even if you're raising funds, for example, right? Earlier it was a given that you would walk into their office or VC's office or VC's would walk into your office, right? But now a Zoom call is the de facto, right? Uh, Independence would come in more in creative fields where yes, we'll see more freelancers because people will realize, the person, maybe this guy is only the consultant, not the execution guy. Earlier, a lot of companies would expect, a manager to design the process and also then, follow the process. But now somebody else would come in, design the process, go out, and there will be a low growth manager who will be just managing the process, right? So that is definitely changing. Uh, with respect to creator economy, I think creator economy is changing how we discover information. Okay, so I see creator economy competing with search engines more than creator economy competing with I don't know, advertising agencies or something like that, right? Uh, And again, people will have audience. So this happened in the offline world, but in different ways. People had network and their Rolodex, and that is what their network would be defined by. Now you have online followership, and maybe earlier you would call people to an event, and you would say, okay, 80 people turned up at my event. Now you call people at a webinar, and 80 people turned up at your webinar. So those things will change. Okay, but if you think there is going to be a lot of change around full-time employment versus freelancing, only in few professions, not in every profession. But what will change is people's businesses now want to grow, and there will be more businesses that want to grow more. Okay, so the demand for freelancers will grow that way. Okay. I mean, that work was anyways outsourced. It's just that now more people will be, the universal set on the demand side has increased. Okay, it's not a behavioral change with respect to saying, okay, this was earlier in-house full time, now I want to outsource. That change is little, but in general, there is more of this kind that I want to pursue. So I'll give you an example. 10 years ago, social media manager meant one person who would manage everything on social media and maybe update your website also. Today, if you want to do even a half decent work, your Twitter guy is different from your Instagram guy, is different from your LinkedIn guy, right? And you could engage that social media manager for 8 hours a day earlier, but now you can engage these guys probably for 30 to 60 minutes a day, right? Hence, if you want that skill, you will have to outsource, right? Because it's not about being able to afford or not afford. You cannot produce 40 hours of work week for this guy, right? So because the work has got more specialized and fragmented, you need to outsource, right? Same thing with CA. My CA 10 years ago would do everything. Now I have a different person for doing ESOPs, and different person helping me do fundraise, and different person doing internal audits and accounting. So specializations have you know been more fragmented. So we'll need more people, and hence freelancer economy will rise.
Absolutely, and we are totally here for it, right? Coming on to my last segment of this episode, which is the rapid fire section. So I have five quick rapid fire questions. That means I will give you two options, one or the other, and you have to pick one out of them. All right,
Okay.
quickly. So let's start. So the first one is raising venture capital or bootstrap.
Bootstrap.
Good. Number two is Twitter or LinkedIn.
Twitter.
Number three, credibility or capability.
Credibility.
All right. Creation or curation.
Creation.
Bangalore or Surat.
Surat.
So you recently switched to Surat. Let's talk about this a little bit. What made you take this switch? Because Bangalore is said to be
Okay.
the destination for startups, right?
So I think three reasons. Okay. Uh, One, bad infra. So Bangalore has a very very poor infra. When I was in Bangalore and I would talk about Surat, people wouldn't believe. Right. Most people in Bangalore haven't heard of Surat because Surat at that time did not have an airport. Surat, by the way, is the seventh largest city in India, second cleanest. Right? So it's not a small city. By all standards, Surat is larger than Jaipur, almost comparable to Pune. Because people don't know that. So had this been a question of Pune versus Bangalore, people wouldn't be surprised, right? Had this question been Gurgaon versus Bangalore, people wouldn't have been surprised. Because Surat is kind of unheard of in the tech arena, so people get surprised. So bad infra is one reason. Okay, only lately I've seen people actually rise up to that. See what happens. Bangalore is very immigrant-driven city where people don't participate in the local issues, right? And because of language barrier, also people don't feel comfortable voicing their opinion on the local issues. Surat doesn't run that way. Okay? So that difference is coming from that infra, right? Bangalore, is say 5 kilometers from MG Road being the center, but the IT starts at Sarjapur Road. Technically, if I'm a Bangalorean, Sarjapur Road is not even in Bangalore, right? So if the Sarjapur Road infra is broken, it doesn't even matter to me if I'm the local councillor, MLA, whatever, right? So it doesn't even get noticed in most cases, right? I lived 1 kilometer away from Wipro headquarters, okay? And till date, there is no water pipeline to that housing society. It's one of the costliest housing societies. I'm living 1 kilometer away from the richest man in India, right? Azim Premji was the richest man in India for some time, and this, and I'm living more towards the city, not outside the city from his place. This place doesn't have water supply, right? The garbage collection is poor. There is still power cut in a city that had the first power supply of India, right? 150 years ago. So people don't understand this. Second is there is an echo chamber there. Okay, people are, because Bangalore has this certain environment in terms of traffic, weather, etc. There are certain problems in Bangalore that exist only in Bangalore. So if you're building a startup in Bangalore, you're building for a very small market. Your insights will be limited to very small market. Okay, especially hyper local startups, etc. Where, so because I was building a consumer startup earlier, I realized I'm losing this sense of understanding user. And one of my past managers who runs, like, very popular person, runs a very large unicorn now, he pointed this out saying, you're losing all your insights, you're talking bullshit. And I realized this only after I left Bangalore, saying, so there are three markets there. There is Indiranagar, there is Bangalore, and then there is India, right? So I did not want that disconnect to happen. So bad infra and completely disconnected. Today when I go to Bangalore, I go to Bangalore once in 1 or 2 months, and I tend to meet more people and more versatile people than when I was actually in Bangalore. I am generally a social guy. I would meet everybody and anyone who would ping me, right? But I don't miss out on those conversations. Okay, so just the way remote working is okay. I think remote conversations on Twitter, etc., is also okay. So I'm not disconnected from that audience. But actually being disconnected 29 days of the month, is good, because it helps me look at saying, is there really a market, right? There is some kind of FOMO, yes. Okay, so sometimes it feels, okay, Bangalore mein hota to this might have been possible or what, right? But then I think that's a lot of cost to pay, right? So the way we work at Refrens, and a lot of people may not like it. My co-founder is in Bangalore full time. He runs a 6 people office there. We are trying to align most technology people there. I work out of Surat. All the non-tech people, product, and marketing people work out of this office, right? And we think it is working out well. Okay, so he likes Bangalore. He's there and here. We actually moved the city first, and then we started. You know, if it is required to move back to Bangalore or any other city for the sake of the startup, I'll do that, right? But that said, if you had to choose, everybody should go to Bangalore for maybe a year, just the way you go to college for a couple of years, but then graduate out of it, saying, okay, ho gaya, college ki life masti ho gayi. Like, let's focus and do some real stuff. Uh, the cost structures, the kind of people, etc., it's very, very skewed, right? So double income families in Bangalore would be definitely more, like, percentage of double income families would be more in Bangalore than any other part of India, right? So if you're building a hyper local startup, your day-to-day activity, saying, okay, do we need deliveries? Yes, because both of us are working, we need deliveries. But in a city like Surat or even Delhi, where people live with their parents, they don't need delivery, because what will that 60-year-old do if everything is delivered to their home? Because going out at 6 p.m. in the evening to buy vegetables or whatever, general groceries, etc., that's part of their lifestyle, right? You can't change that habit, right? So I own like a very tiny shares in Big Basket. I've been trying to convince my family in Surat to use Big Basket. It doesn't work out. They use it probably once in a year. That's it, right? Because it's not part of the lifestyle. In Bangalore, when I go, none of my friends can live without Big Basket. They're like, something is broken if Big Basket is not working. Right? So again, your taxi companies were a great example. Great problem to solve for Bangalore, although it never got solved. They only, I don't know, misappropriated the problem, right? Of the problem was that the city's bus infra was broken. Buses would ply at 6 rupees, 7 rupees a kilometer. And then when Ola came in, they gave you taxis at 6 rupees kilometer. So obviously you will disrupt the market, right? But both of these were unsustainable. I hear that buses rates have gone down now, right? So again sign of broken infra. So I like to define it as like a lab, right? With a lot of, it's like a rat lab with a lot of where experiments should be done. Okay, and everybody in Bangalore is that guinea pig on whom this experiment is being done, and you are incentivized, saying, okay, all the VC money will come to you as incentives. Great. Can you create a startup out of that? No. Okay. You should be in Bangalore if you're trying to build for US. Culturally, every Bangalorean is more is closer to San Francisco than they are to say Delhi or Bombay. Right? I'm not even talking about Indore or Surat. Right? So yeah, I think that disconnect, and only when you come out you will realize, okay, there is something really really missing. As a techie, you will not realize because you spend all your time on GitHub, right? So, and the problem is given to you, it's already broken down before it's given to you, right? If you try to argue with your product manager, the product manager will ignore you, saying, "यार तुम techie हो, तुम code करो, तुमको क्या मतलब कि market कहाँ जा रहा है?" But most techies in Bangalore understand this. Most product managers are only reflecting to their day-to-day life, and their day-to-day life is a very small segment of audience. That user persona is very small, right? So yeah, this was 50% of the reason that I moved out. Rest of it was a little personal also. I just wanted to, maybe not have a time bomb on my head. So when I talk to a lot of North Indians in Bangalore, they're like, after this is done, I'm moving back with my parents. After this is done, I'm moving back to my hometown, right? If I'm doing a startup, I don't want that time bomb on my head saying, there is something to go back. It's almost like, most Indians in US, they always have this longingness saying, one day I'll move back to India. Right? That never
Right,
happens.
right.
And same thing with Bangaloreans, they'll never move back. I said, if I'm going to do a startup, I don't want that taking time off. I'm going to do this for the rest of my life. For 25, 30 years, I'm going to build reference without thinking, oh, isko bech dete hain, and then I will move out to start living with parents or something. I didn't want that.
Yeah, that's amazing. And you just called Bangalore a rat lab. That's a thing.
Most VCs privately say that. Nobody would say that publicly, but most VCs say that privately. A lot of VCs fund Bangalore startups because they are based in Bangalore. There's no other reason. Okay. You've seen, right, during the pandemic, a lot of Indore-based startups suddenly started funding. Jaipur-based startups are getting funded. So, it's just that we've been, brainwashed all these years saying, this IIT guy will always do better. Same way, the Bangalorean startup will do better. We've just, as a society, we've been brainwashed that way, right? Otherwise, there's no reason. I mean, if you're selling in the US, maybe your client comes to Bangalore, right? Your insight that you'll drive is very similar. And how can you be selling in India? Your product manager should be in India, not in Indiranagar, right? If you are making for India. See, what happens is early stage, you will get a lot of audience because the demand density is very high in Indiranagar and Bangalore. Right? But after that, you go out, you move out, you learn the audience. So I'll tell you how I work. I work out of a co-working space for the last 5 years, and there are 17 freelancers in this co-working space. So if I get an idea, in the next 17 minutes, I can pitch it to 17 different people and get a validation, right? I have my lunch with these 17 freelancers for the last few years, right? So I'm closer to the market that I'm building for, right? And I don't know, I'm not sure if that would have been possible in any other place.
Right. So the rats out of the bag, we can say.
I don't know. I think Pradhani, people will misappropriate this word that I used, but people are living a very difficult, very, very, very difficult life in Bangalore. Right? They don't understand. They are some of the highest taxpayers of India, but they are living on a very, very broken infra.
Okay. So it was great talking to you with all the insights that you shared throughout and throughout. And for anyone who's looking to get into freelancing, or even any founder who's looking to how they should think about a problem, this episode is no less than gold. And your thoughts on creator economy, freelance economy, the complications of freelancing that often get ignored, and even freelancers firing clients and letting go of them. Some great insights shared there. Thank you so much for doing this with me. And Naman, lastly, I would ask you to share your social links or anywhere that people can reach you or follow your work.
It was great to be on the show. And yep, for everybody listening, you can follow me on Twitter. It's Naman SR on Twitter, LinkedIn, or Instagram. I'm mostly active on Twitter. That's the place to follow. Thank you.
All right. I will make sure to put all the links in the show notes below so that everyone can reach there easily. Thank you so much, Naman, for doing this. I hope you enjoy.
I did. Thank you so much.